good morning. Welcome to my channel, welcome to my video, and if you're new here, I'm Zahra. I just want to say hi because I've been getting a lot of new people on my page and it's been so mind-blowing and also I don't know, just I never expected it. Just wanted to welcome you new and people who've been here for a minute with me. Today I want to talk to you guys about audiobooks. I personally love audiobooks. I use them pretty much almost every day. I use them while I am driving, I use them while I am making dinner, I use them while I'm cleaning my house. I really think that audiobooks are just one of my favorite forms of consuming books. So I wanted to give you guys a few recommendations and also talk through what I think makes an audiobook work for me as the reader and listener that I am. I do want to have a little disclaimer that that's just my personal preference. We'll get into it and you'll see why I'm saying this, because there are a few things in my audiobooks that I don't really enjoy that I know that other people might really like having as part of their audiobook experience. So before we get into the recommendations though, I do want to kind of just explain what my standards are so you can kind of know, have an idea of what I'll be recommending essentially. I just want to start by acknowledging that the conversation about the differences and similarities between audiobooks and physically reading has been had, and I know that this is probably a conversation that's kind of tired by this point. I think it's worth mentioning that there are differences in not just the experience of reading, but also the tools that we use when we read via an audiobook or when we were reading the words on a page. I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, and I don't think that that takes away from the fact that you are reading. It does depend on the kind of reader you are and what you want from the books you read. Some people want to be able to, highlight quotes. Some people just care about, knowing the story at the end of the after you've read the whole book, knowing what the story was, knowing the main plot points. Other people want to have a message from what they're reading. So it is ultimately comes down to what you want as the reader you are. For me, I really like to have just an idea of the plot and characters. I love getting attached to characters, but also something that I really look for in a lot of the books I read, regardless of genre, is just a message or some sort of a thought that I have in response to what I'm reading. So it can be as simple as a scene that I read or listen to that really stays with me. The easiest example that I can reach for right now, because it's one of the more fresh instances in my mind, is when I was reading Never Let Me Go. I read 70% of it physically, and then the last 25-30% I listened to an audiobook, and the scene that really stuck in my mind was actually a scene that I heard rather than necessarily read on the page. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the reader you are, and I don't think reading is or should be a competition. I'm also a big proponent of taking time with books. Try to read a lot because I want to, but I don't feel like I'm in any sort of competition with anyone to read more than the next person. So I just also want to point out some advantages of audiobooks. The first reason that I have is accessibility. I think this is the one that we're all kind of aware of. Audiobooks really make just reading so accessible to people who, for one reason or another, can't read the words on a page. It can be something like you have a disability that prevents you from being able to read the words on the page, or even sit for long periods of times and just stare at a page or e-reader. Alternatively, it could be as simple as you don't have the time to sit down for several hours a week to read a book because you're always on the go. You're driving, you're cleaning, you're cooking, you're commuting to work, and which is the same thing as driving, but you have other things that are going on, but you still want to read. I think audiobooks make it very accessible for people to read those books. I think they can also really add to the experience of reading. Now, my preferences, as you'll see, are a little more mellow than this, but for people who want to have more of a multi-dimensional experience with the book, a lot of audiobooks do have sound effects of some sort, whether it's the narrator, doing inflections of voice and tone while they're reading. Or also, you know, if there's music or there's like sound effects, that there are books that are audiobooks that are like that. Make the reading experience much more enjoyable. And also, like, again, if someone's not a big reader, this could encourage them to be more of a reader if they want to. I had another thought too that was like, sometimes audiobooks can also help with the comprehension of the text. So we all know that like when you send texts back and forth with your friends or people, especially people that you don't know super well, sometimes you can get confused on the tone or what's meant to be interpreted from that. And I think that audiobooks can help you as a reader understand more clearly what the tone of like the dialogue, for example, is trying to accomplish, and it can help with reading comprehension. And I think that's like a really good plus of audiobooks too. And then finally, which I think this is the biggest one, is immersive reading. So utilizing audiobooks in addition to looking at the words in the page can really help you become more immersed in the reading and like be able to focus all the more, because you are using multiple senses to consume the book that you're reading. And it can also help you read a little bit faster. I mean, I know for a fact, like when I try to read in Farsi, I experience this, so I can only imagine it translates the same across languages. But when I'm trying to read Farsi, I read so slowly that I get frustrated and I stop reading a lot of times. So my family members will buy me books in Farsi and give them to me, and I'll read like 10 pages and then I'll get tired because I'm just like, this is taking so long. For English at least, because I know there's more audiobooks in English than I know of in Farsi. If you're trying to read a book in English and maybe it's not your first language, you can utilize immersive reading, not just to like practice the language more if that's something you want to do, but also so that you can get through the story fast enough that doesn't frustrate you. Because I know for a fact that if I had access to more Iranian like Farsi audiobooks, I'd really want to listen to them, look at the page too. So that's also something that I thought about. If you're wondering why I'm holding this, by the way, it's because it's so warm. I have coffee. Been like a week, I think, of just very cloudy days here, like raining a lot more, but like April showers, I guess. And I do miss the sun though. So my standards for audiobooks, this is my personal taste. When I was going through the list of the audiobooks that I wanted to recommend, I noticed a general thread between all of them, and I thought that it was worth kind of mentioning, just because I do know that there are other audiobook readers that might have different preferences than me, and if I give my recommendations and they read those and they don't like them, they're gonna be like, what are you even saying? So I just want to clarify what my like top audiobooks contain or don't. I have 3 main things I'm looking for when I am listening to previewing an audiobook. First is that I prefer sound effects and like extra noise to be at a minimum. I think for me, it's a little bit overwhelming and overstimulating specifically to have too much extra noise that's not just the words. I've experienced this with a lot of audiobooks that I ended up kind of DNFing or switching to the book for, where the narrator will like grunt when it says she grunts, or the narrator will laugh when the character is supposed to be laughing, and I don't like that. It's not a deal breaker. If I really want to read the book and listen to it specifically, I still will, but I'd rather it didn't. I don't know. I just want the words on the page mainly. Yeah, I prefer not to have anything like that, because it does take me out of the story. I also don't love having music in the audiobooks because, again, I just want to be paying attention to the words. And I think this kind of goes into my next point, which is, for me, the way that I see it, books are meant to have like less dimensions, just because they are one of the art forms that gives you the most room for imagination. At least that's how I see it. And when there's music or sound effects like that, I just feel like it's taking away from like what I'm going to be imagining in my head. I used to listen to music while reading physical books too, but I recently stopped that, and I can only listen to rain noises, both when I'm reading and writing. I don't know why that's changed, but for now, that's what I've been kind of preferring. So some of the audiobooks might have a little bit of like music, intro, outro specifically a lot of times, but generally there's no like underlying music. It started raining. I like the rain, so I don't mind it, but not if I have to go out. I want my audiobooks to be more mellow. I want to have the words being in my brain without too much like extra stuff, and that's just my preference. I do think that more not immersive, but more multi-dimensional or multimodal audiobooks are useful. For me, that's just how I've been feeling. I like more mellow narrators, which doesn't mean that they don't do the voices for like the male main character versus the female main character, but I want it to be like a little bit, like a little more subtle, which goes into my third thing, which is I love subtlety. That kind of like in the same way that when you're reading like a pretty big book and you might miss or not focus on some part of it over another. I love audiobooks that can be revisited, and each time you find something a little bit different or something you realize something that you didn't notice, whether it's a pronunciation of words or specific used for a character. I prefer for it to align with the story, not change it. So if it's adding anything, it's adding it because it's relevant to the story, not because it's trying to change the overall experience of the story. Hopefully that was a little bit of a useful setup for the books that I'm going to be recommending to you. So originally I had 11, but I thought about it more and I refined my list and I have 8 for you. I really want to, oh my God, it's actually snowing. Oh wait, let me show you guys. I don't know if you can tell actually. There, you can probably see it a little more clear now. I really want to be intentional about appreciating the work of the narrators. It is hard work to narrate a book, and I really want to just like show some appreciation to audiobook narrators. Hello, hello, hello. Oh, can you hear me? Hopefully you can. Do be very careful about holding this, otherwise it makes a lot of scratchy noises and I don't want that. My neighbors are making noise again, so let's get into the recommendations. I really want to hold my mug. This is weird. Is it weird? Am I overthinking it? Just a note before I give you guys my recommendations, I'm not going to really talk about what the book's about unless it's relevant to the work that the narrator does. So predominantly, I'm just going to be talking about the narrator, how they read, how I like it, why I like it, and all of that. And I will mention certain plot points, not spoilery, that kind of add to the reading of this novel. The first audiobook that I want to recommend to you guys is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is narrated by Julia Whelan. I love the story already. I initially read this as an ebook, so I read it myself. And then later on, when I wanted to reread it, I listened to the audiobook and I was really pleased to see that it was really well done. One of the things that I really love about the way Julia Whelan went about narrating this book is that she worked really closely with V.E. Schwab to make sure that they were sticking as close to the point of the novel as possible. And you can really tell because there are certain aspects of the story that bleed through in such a subtle way in the way that Julia is narrating that you don't really pick up on the first time. So this is what I was talking about, of the like subtle additions that enrich the story as opposed to changing it. Basically, the character is French and she's also immortal. And the reason these two things are relevant is because she travels around the world a lot and she ends up in America. And as she's going through this novel, Julia Whelan starts her off with like a thicker French accent. But as you're going through the novel, like as you're going through the narrative, she loses her accent. And I didn't realize this until the second time that I listened to the audiobook, that this was happening. And I was like, oh my God, that's so clever. I don't even think that the book itself says that she lost her accent. I think this is just a detail that they realized would conceivably happen for this character. And so I really love this narrator. This is why my list got a little bit shorter actually, because I had another book on here by Julia Whelan that she narrated, which was an Emily Henry book. And I realized I just want to give Julia Whelan like a shout out. If you're looking for an audiobook and you want to read, specifically, she does a lot of like romance. Julia Whelan narrates like very, very well. She's one of my favorite narrators, and last year in January 2024, I went an entire kick listening to audiobooks that she narrated, and I had so much fun. Number 2 is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This is narrated by Helen. I've only experienced it as an audiobook. However, as I was actively reading this novel and listening to the audiobook, I had this thought over and over again of like, wow, this narrator is doing the like resentment, the anger, the jealousy so well in not just the way that she's doing the dialogue, but also the character's inner thoughts, because this is in first person point of view. And so you're like hearing so distinctly in real time this character's desperation and also self-manipulation. It went so well with the novel's like the point of the novel. I really think that the narrator did a really good job, and Helen like brought her A game basically. I still think that listening to the audiobook for this one made the experience of the novel much, much better than it would have been if I'd read it myself. Number 3 is The Secret History by Donna Tartt, read by Donna Tartt. I think I really enjoyed it because Donna Tartt has this like very specific accent that I enjoy. Like when she was reading, she has this like very subtle accent that I really liked. And also I liked the voice she did for Bunny. I don't know why or like how she accomplished that exactly, but the way that she did that Bunny's voice, it just worked for me. And I actually read most of The Secret History myself, and then I switched to the audiobook, and I really enjoyed the way that Donna Tartt was reading it. So later on, when I wanted to reread it, I actually started listening to the audiobook again, and yeah, really enjoyed that. Obviously, like, no special effects or anything like that, which is probably also playing into why I like this so much. But I think it's cool when the author reads their own work too. The next recommendation, number 4, that I want to give you guys is A Song in Ice and the Song in Ice and The Song of Ice and Fire, which is the Game of Thrones books. This is read by, hold on, I need to put this down. Read by Roy Dotrice. This is one of my favorite books to listen to. I read all of the, and there's multiple reasons for this one actually, so we'll get into it in a second. But first of all, I think he does a really good job because he does do the voices, and you would think that maybe it wouldn't work very well because there's like specific like female characters in the novel that are just like younger too, and like he has like an older man's voice, but he does it really well. I really, really enjoy the way he reads it, and I like the way that he differentiates the characters. There's no excessive like sound effects, which is like all kind of aligns with what I'd want. So want to add that like, and this actually could go earlier on in the it's snowing. That's so crazy. It's literally April. Anyway, I think the other benefit of audiobooks is if there's like an especially long book, it can really help the book to be a little less daunting if you can listen to it and kind of chip away at it. I have read all of the subtle flex, I guess, but I have read all of the books um, many, many years ago when I had a lot more time in my life. And since then, I've always wanted to revisit the books, but I've never felt like I have the time because they are such massive books. Instead, I've gone and picked up the audiobooks, and I am like slowly chipping away at them. This series is kind of that for me, where I love to just, you know, listen to a little bit at a time, and I'm familiar with the story and I love the story so much, but I also can like stay with that story throughout my days, and I don't have to like rush to finish it and blah blah blah. I love the audiobooks for these for this series so much, so I highly recommend, if you've been interested in the Game of Thrones and the other books, basically the whole series, give it a try, because I think that he does a really good job with the narration. And then number 5 is, this is like a really fun one. The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy by Megan Bannon, read by Michael Gallagher and Rachanee Lumayno. I just love this story. So the book itself was obviously great, but clearly I enjoyed the narration as well. And I really like that we have two different narrators for the two love interests. It was so good, you guys. I don't really have any notes because I just thought it was such a fun listen. And again, I love the touch of the different narrators for the love interests. Number 6 is Three Women by Lisa Taddeo. This is read by Lynne Barr, Marin Ireland, Mena Suvari, and Lisa Taddeo also reads part of it herself. I generally really like to read nonfiction books as audiobooks because it feels like listening to a podcast, and so I retain the information generally, but I also feel like it might not be as monotonous as staring at the page because I do get kind of tired. It does depend on the nonfiction itself and like how it's written, but I do really love just generally picking up audiobooks, nonfiction books as audiobooks. And this one specifically, I really love the way that the different narrators brought the different individual women's stories to life, and I think it just really impacted me because of that. It increased the book's impact on me. It's not that I don't think that it would have impacted me otherwise, but I do think that it really added to that experience. And the way, again, when you're listening to an audiobook, because there's like a real person's voice behind it, it can really help to solidify certain things that are being said, or certain feelings behind the stories that are being told. And specifically with this nonfiction book, it just really impressed upon me the different experiences that these women had. Number 7 is Heir by Saba Taher. This is narrated by Vidish athavale, Esme Lonsdale, Joe Pitts, Marco Young, and Rachel Petladwala. Having different narrators for the different characters really added to my experience of the story. I think that they did a really good job, and it was a really great touch having different narrators, different voices, reading the different characters' parts. I liked how it distinguished the characters from each other, and I liked how it personalized them a little bit more, because I do think that, like, obviously the voices in our head are very strong and they can do a good job of distinguishing characters, but I think it kind of adds another level of absorption of these characters and their personalities when you have very different voices being read for very different characters. And last but not least, this one is actually kind of special in my heart. Bunny by Mona Awad. This was read by Sophie Amos, and the reason I want to bring this one up is because it is kind of, I am a little bit biased towards this one because it's the first audiobook that I read in recent history. In like the last few years, that really kind of jump started my love for audiobooks and realizing how much audiobooks like enrich my reading. This was the first audiobook that made me self-aware about audiobooks. I kind of like to tie it a little bit to Yellowface in the voice and the tone and the way that the narrator narrates, but I really thought that she did a good job in kind of addressing and following the characters' like slow descent into madness. So those are the 8 books that I would love to recommend for you guys to pick up as audiobooks. Again, I don't think that audiobooks that might not necessarily align with my preferences are bad audiobooks. They're just different. As the reader that I am and like person that I am, I guess I just prefer my audiobooks to be a little bit more mellow and like calm. But that doesn't mean that I haven't read audiobooks that weren't like that and like them. Ultimately, I think that if the book is really good, then your experience of the audiobook will hopefully be good too. Although I have had experiences where the audiobook wasn't the greatest, and that put me off of the book a little bit. So I do want to encourage you that if you ever do read an audiobook or listen to an audiobook and it doesn't, like, you don't like it, try the book itself. I say book itself, but it's hard to like differentiate between read the physical book. Alternatively, I have had experiences where the physical book wasn't really drawing my attention, but when I started listening to an audiobook because of the narrator's work, I ended up really liking it. So none of this is meant to like put any pressure on anyone to read more books. I'm just wanted to share some of the audiobooks that I really like and just talk about my experiences with audiobooks because I really like them. Like I wanted to make a specific video about audiobooks because they hold a very special part in my place in my reading life. Let me know if there's any audiobooks that you've read recently, or just generally any audiobooks that you've ever read that were really, really good and you enjoyed. Alternatively, let me know what your standards are for audiobooks. Do you like the dramatization and like the voice effects and sound effects, or do you like more mellow audiobooks like I do? Hopefully I'll see you guys in another video very soon. I'm so excited because I have almost wrapped up reading the 2 books for my physical books vlogs, or my last one, and I'm super looking forward to talking to you guys about them. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to listen to me yap. But yeah, I will see you guys hopefully in another video very soon. Goodbye.